Welcome to Show Studio's live panel discussions. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, in the midst of Paris Fashion Week, we're going to be discussing Kenzo's Autumn/Winter 22 collection and Nigo's debut at the house. My name is Lee Goldup, and I'm currently the menswear buyer at Browns. I'm just going to ask the rest of the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Ayo.
Hi, I'm Ayo Ojo. I'm a current freelance fashion journalist and also a fashion journalism student at Central St. Martin's.
Next up, Jian.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Jian DeLeon, currently the men's fashion and editorial director at Nordstrom.
And then Lee.
My name is Lee Takanashi. I'm currently a staff writer in Complex's style section.
And then finally, Jody.
How you guys doing? My name is Jody, and I am a music and fashion curator and video content creator.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. So what did you guys think of the show?
Well, I'll go first. Just starting off, I was really vibing with the aesthetics. I love the music. I think that, injecting Nigo into the Kenzo brand, which, if we're being honest, hasn't really, they're kind of always in this weird section of fashion. They're not popular pretty much. But to inject Nigo with the energy, you know what I'm saying? I love the music. I love the fact that they have Kanye, they have Tyler, that they have, Pusha T on the catwalk. I mean, that's fire. And that's why you bring in Nigo, It's I love seeing those elements of hip hop culture. So I'm not even really worried about the clothes so far. I'm just off that, I was tuned in. So I love the music element of it for sure.
Yeah, but oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was about to say that, honestly, this is the first Kenzo show I tuned into, and it's mainly because of Nigo's presence in it. It was the first time I actually went to check it out, and I was not so disappointed at all. And the last time I remember Kenzo being a brand I kind of recognized was when the opening ceremony folks were behind it. So yeah, very happy to see it, and I really love the soundtrack in the show too. Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, to build on what Jody and Lay were just saying, the last time all this conversation was around Kenzo was when I worked at Complex, which was, almost 10 years ago, before Lay's time. And, in the mid 2000s, that's when Humberto, Leon, and Carol Lim were at the house. They made, that Kenzo Tiger sweatshirt a luxury item. And at the time, Kenzo was we don't make sweatshirts, but then it became such a commercially viable proposition for them in women's wear. Not just menswear, but then they did partnerships with Vans. They brought New Era caps in, and they just brought that legacy of the house. Kenzo Takada, is a Japanese designer who was also very influenced by French architecture. His house is the perfect synthesis of this, right? It's fusion is so hard to talk about because so often it's Asian fusion is corny, but for somebody like Nigo and for somebody like Kenzo to be able to understand the provenance of Haussmannian architecture and where Japanese tradition can be juxtaposed with that. And the way that Nigo, looks at classic Levi's vintage and N3B snorkel parkas, and they can place them alongside, Ivy sack suits in this collection. It's really just a culmination of how they process, things they might come across from old magazines or they might come across in the real world, and then really just filter it in this really fine way that just comes from, being true students of the game. And Nigo isn't just a student of the game, right? At this point, he's also a teacher. And I think we see that in this collection. And also, as Jody pointed out, the soundtrack, which, I think it's from his forthcoming album, which is a celebration of all the connections and homies he's made along the way. You have Tyler, Pharrell, of course. And, shouts to my guy, Reese LaFleur, who just tweeted an amazing photo with him. And it's just a total celebration and a culmination of decades in the making, I feel like.
Yeah, I think to add on what everyone said, I think obviously we'll go into the details of the collection later, but for me, what was so refreshing was just Nigo being at Kenzo, because I think for a long time, the issue I've had with luxury brands is this idea of what streetwear is and what they call streetwear. Because Nigo is someone I think actually understands what streetwear means in the essence of street culture and streetwear. And I think a lot of fashion execs don't understand that streetwear comes from culture. I think a lot of these execs now, they see it as an aesthetic and they're looking at the numbers and they're like, oh, I see this thing is really big. Let's just make sweatshirts, but they don't actually know where it comes from. And people can see that. We know that. I mean, when I was younger, I was the kid that was skating. I was the kid that was wearing skinny jeans with like gold studded belts, jerking and doing jerking battles. So I think my issue is that there's been a lack of understanding of where this culture comes from. And I think that's something that Nigo is definitely going to inject at Kenzo. And I saw that in this collection.
Nah, for sure. I totally see what you're talking about with that. Like, when you think about, like, I guess like streetwear's prominence into fashion, like I think the apex of it, right, was like what Virgil was doing over, you know, with that Louis Vuitton RP Virg. But like when I'm seeing certain pieces and I'm seeing the way it's styled, right, like baggy pants, you know what I'm saying, fitted, like new era fitteds, like people don't understand, like 10, 15 years back, people that looked like me were profiled looking like that. But now this culture, you know what I'm saying, it's gotten so big and so prominent that these luxury fashion houses, they have to tap in. You know what I'm saying? They have to tap in with the culture. And like now we see it, you know what I'm saying? And we have Nigo, you know, the general, the GOAT, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I spent thousands of my, you know what I'm saying, money that I didn't have, you know what I'm saying, eating ramen noodles just to get bait. And then now to see, you know, him, you know what I'm saying, the creative director of a luxury fashion house, and you can see the pieces are like completely different. And it's fire.
For sure. You know, to Jody's point too, I think Nigo and Pharrell, like that whole relationship is the foundation for a lot of the world we're in today. You know, when Kanye presented Pharrell his CFDA award for Icon, you know, Kanye being like, there would be no me if it wasn't for Pharrell. And then Pharrell being at Nigo's show and, you know, in a New York Times article, Nigo was like, I was going through a midlife crisis. And Pharrell was pretty much the one that's like, yo, you're Nigo. You got to do this and you got to kill it. And he went so hard with this debut collection. And it's a true testament to, you know, how both Pharrell and Nigo have really just uplifted the community that's brought them to where they are and has progressed in many ways along the way. And I think the way that, you know, it was almost like this culmination of everything Nigo's brought to the table. Like, I mean, we only have an hour, so I don't even have time to talk about like Mr. Bathing Ape and Human Made. But I think the important thing is, you know, it's the year of the tiger in the Chinese zodiac. The Tibetan tiger rug has been such an influence on Nigo. You know, Mr. Bathing Ape was this line influenced by like Ivy style that was done with United Arrows back in the day. And so it's, you know, Nigo sort of broke out of the box that he's often placed in of like printables, you know, hoodies, things like that. And he just took it to the next level while at the same time honoring the heritage of the house in a way that he saw fit. Like he put 1970 on a lot of the garments because it wasn't just his own birth date or birth year, but that was the same day that, or the same year that Kenzo Takada first showed in the same location, the Galerie Vivian in Paris, where the show took place. And so there's a lot of layers here.
And it's kind of interesting. Sorry, I was going to say, it was also interesting how like they both had to have similar like trajectories or life stories and backgrounds, you know, like they both went to the Bunker College of Fashion, but also like I read that they're both, you know, obviously Nigo was a rebel in his own right for the streetwear realm, but like Kenzo was like what he was doing at the time in Paris versus like, you know, in Dior, like all those other French luxury brands, like was very like just like rebellious and different just because he had this like global worldview of just like fashion, which I think Nigo also has too, which is just cool to see how like now we have the first Japanese designer since Kenzo, you know, Ake
right.
Kenzo. You know?
I think that's awesome. Also important too, right? Yeah, and I think they're both iconoclasts in their own right. That will pretty much like, look, we know we're Japanese. We're going to take that to the global scale, on a global scale, in the same way that, you know, a lot of their contemporaries like Great Kawakubo, et cetera, did, but the way that they did it through this, you know, kind of cosmopolitan understanding of the world around them. and the way they did that in their own way is absolutely important.
So in terms of like the collection itself, you know, like breaking it down a little bit, what were your guys' kind of favorite pieces, favorite looks? Like, which do you think was the best bits?
Honestly, I love.
With the, no, go ahead. My fault. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I love the shearling bombers. I also love the denim pieces because, you know, obviously Nigo's really good at denim because he has this obsession with vintage Levi's and things of that nature. One thing that kind of surprised me was just the backpacks too. They had these really intense, like military style backpacks that I really loved. Those were the looks that really stood out to me. You know, the prints I felt like really paid respect to just like, you know, Kenzo's legacy, and that's what I enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite prints, right? In addition to the florals, there's a print that's literally made from archival drawings by Kenzo Takada that he made into like a suit, and I think that's like it's amazing like how deep Nigo could go. I think Sydney Toledano, you know, was amazed by the sheer amount of knowledge Nigo had, but that doesn't surprise me. Like he's also like a not only ultimate curator, but he's also a collector in his own right. So, you know, and he's an astute collector and he studies everything and has that genuine enthusiasm and curiosity around it. So I think it definitely shows up here.
Yeah, I think for me in this collection, I saw like a deep level of research that Nigo did. Because when I think of Kenzo historically and inspiration-wise, I think of this fusion between sort of an Eastern and a Western sensibility. And we see this like throughout the collection, whether we see obviously the type of prints that Kenzo does, or we see models wearing Western shirts. I think there was an example in look 28, or we even saw this look that was like look 42 and a few other looks where it almost looked like if we were to fuse the school uniform of what you consider traditional clothing from the East and then mix that in the West and create sort of a new uniform for Kenzo, which was quite interesting. So yeah, I liked all the elements of sort of Kenzo history, and I think there's so many parallels between Nigo and Kenzo himself because both of them do that thing. I think Kenzo obviously went to Paris, but he brought a Japanese sensibility the same way that Nigo sort of looked at American streetwear, but also brought a Japanese sensibility to it. So I think I really like that aspect in the collection.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the instant standout hits are, you know, in addition to the expected tiger motif, which is important to the house, but turning it into a collar for a snorkel parka, or the, you know, Howry style blazers elevated into high-end tailoring. But I think the blink and you'll miss it touch is taking the Japanese Sukajan souvenir jacket and turning it into, you know, a side bag, which I thought was the most brilliant thing that I saw.
Yeah, me personally, I really love the tailoring of the pants, like these wide twill, like almost suit pants that they had. Super fire. I was also rocking with like the all over print suits. It just like Nigo just injecting fun, you know? Like I feel like fashion, right? At times it becomes a little pretentious and it becomes like a little too exclusive, even though that part of it is fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you're not up on this, but making clothing that people can actually wear, you know what I'm saying, out is fire. So unfortunately, I'm about to go broke. Now I gotta cop the Louis from Virgil. Now I cop Kenzo too. So I'm about to be ramen noodles for a few nights, for sure.
I guess one other thing I wanted to ask you guys, were you surprised not to see sort of, you know, in the current climate, like to see a collaboration in this collection, which we just seem to see so much of at the minute?
I mean, I feel like the whole collection off the jump is a collaboration, right? Because it's like Nigo and Kenzo and, you know, and Takada-san, the man. And it's reconciling those kind of two eras and making it speak to this new generation. I feel like that was what had to happen, right? The fact that the first promo around this collection was Nigo being like, you know, I'm in the building, like here's my card, at this time where, you know, Luigi Villaseñor is heading to Bali. You know, we're left wondering like what's going to happen post Vuitton after Virgil, and we're just like, all right, like the movers and shakers and people we didn't know could be in these positions. It's a total paradigm shift. And so I think keeping the focus on here's the immediate impact I want to have and let me level set the agenda I want to push forward for Kenzo was super important.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I'm happy that there was no collabs. Like in the day and age with like everyone's collabing with everybody. I'm surprised we don't have a Walmart and McDonald's collab at this point. Like, so having Nigo, his first show, you know, this is my vision. This is where we're taking it. You know what I'm saying? It was clear, it was direct. So I'm rocking with that. Obviously, we're gonna get the collab in the future because Nigo loves his collabs and I love spending my money on it. So it's gonna happen. But I think it was great that for the first collection, kept the direction clean.
I was honestly surprised there were no collaborations. And when I first heard of Kenzo news, the first thought I actually had was, oh, there's definitely gonna be like a cause Kenzo collab being lined up in the future, you know. And I'm surprised just because Nigo kind of architected the whole streetwear collab back in the days, just like Future, Stash, and Cause, and all those great artists back in the late '90s. But at the same time, it was interesting reading like some of the interviews he did before the show happened and saying how he believes collaborations are just so they're just too many nowadays and they just don't mean anything. Which is what I'm wondering about what I'm wondering now is like, what is a good collaboration going to be for Nigo at Kenzo now? You know, is it going to be if like a friend of his like Cause or Future, or is he going to try to find something like a little bit less, I guess? Because at this point, I mean, although all respects to those two artists, like, I mean, they're pretty much the go-to collaborators for like, you know, graffiti, streetwear, that kind of vibe, you know? And I'm wondering, you know, what direction he would go if he does go down that route, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, another part that Jody and Ayo were talking about earlier too, right, is like, and Nigo brought this up, is streetwear sort of become normal and quote streetwear, right? The word itself has always just been, nobody who's made anything that falls into what people would say is streetwear has ever said, I make streetwear. And anybody who's ever said that isn't making streetwear in that way.
They're dorks.
Right, exactly. And it's almost like, you know, it's an indictment of how reductive that term has become, because of how it's become a catch-all for any sort of non-white designer who's made sneakers or who has made printables and, you know, created a profitable business off that. And, you know, coming in hot with like a fashion capital F runway collection for, you know, a fashion house. Nigo's like, yeah, I've been here. And I feel like in many ways, if you were to connect the dots between what his aspiration was for Bape and like what Sean Stussey's aspiration was for Stussy before they both left their respective companies, it's probably more like this than like anything like what a brand like Supreme has become.
And I guess that kind of shows in sort of the values of both brands, because I know when Nigo sold it, he didn't really sell it for much. I think it was like a couple million, whereas
2.8 million.
Exactly. Whereas if you look at Supreme, I mean, oh my gosh, it sold for loads of money. So it even shows like where they were at the point at which sort of the brand sort of left themselves. Because even now people would say that the idea of what Bape is has sort of left itself.
Yeah, but like in 2013 when Nigo left Bape, like that childlike wonder was like left the brand. You could tell like he was mentally already like going somewhere else. Like the pieces weren't hitting like how they were hitting. I know I don't want to make some Bape conversation, but so that's why it's cool to see what he's doing like Human Made, and now with Kenzo, you know what I'm saying, like seeing like that childlike wonder, seeing like the creativity, seeing like passion, you know. So it's dope to see.
I think one thing that surprised me about this collection, right, was how colorful it was and how maximal it was. And if you're familiar with Kenzo and what they've done, that's in line. But if you're familiar with Nigo, it's like we're talking about a guy who wears, you know, a pair of Levi's 501s and like a trucker jacket from like 1913 that, you know, doesn't look like it's worth $30,000. But he has a very conservative way of dressing these days compared to, you know, the heyday when him and Pharrell had like the crazy Jacob jewelry, you know? And so I think it's a welcome, you know, evolution for him, and to show that he can still do that crazy stuff super well, but it's done in a truly elevated way.
And I was going to say, it kind of goes back to what you said, where it was sort of a conversation between Kenzo and Nigo. Because when I was looking at the collection, I thought a lot of the footwear was very typical of something you'd see Nigo wear. but then maybe not so much the clothing. And so that's sort of also where the conversation is.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the silhouettes you could have imagined him in, but like to Jian's point, maybe a bit more pared back in terms of color palette, a little bit less vibrant. Like some of these workwear silhouettes with like the hickory stripes and the dungarees and all that stuff, you could totally see, especially that, you could see him in the denim look maybe. But yeah, a lot of the other things, maybe not the actual pattern, but potentially the silhouette. But yeah, no, on the footwear for sure, like those work boots throughout the show are the sort of thing you see him in all the time.
Yeah, especially like the Red Wing classic mock.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that is like a quintessential Nigo shoe or any sort of ripple soled work boot. You're like, okay, I think he was literally wearing a pair of those creepers at the end of the show.
Yeah, for sure. And there's I forget what look it was, but one of the girls has got like some higher boots on that look like a Red Wing kind of style, and you can definitely see him in something like that. They're only in like one look, I think, but they're that sort of, they're not the classic Red Wing boot, they're the higher ones. No, I can't remember what look it was, but some of that footwear for sure, you could definitely imagine him wearing that.
What do you think we can come to expect from Nigo's collections in the future? Because Kenzo himself was really obsessed with animals. I mean, in 1979, he had that famous collection where he rode an elephant and it was held at a circus. And the thing about Kenzo is he's actually quite interested in many different animals, but there has been a focus on the tiger. So maybe Nigo could make like the elephant sort of the main animal or do something different with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's another, I was almost surprised we didn't see a whole menagerie, right? And I almost think it's a better thing. Like in many ways, Nigo zagged when he could have zigged with his collection, because it's his, the Stephen Victor album has like a bulldog, like human made. There's a polar bear, there's the tiger that comes up, and there's so many different animals that he's used in his work, even at Bape, right? Like the shark hoodie based on the World War II fighters, and it's become such like a expected thing for him. I wouldn't be so worried to see how he reconciles it. I think it's about how he sort of flips it and says people think they're going to see this, but I'm going to give them this instead.
Yeah, I was kind of sort of surprised to see quite how much floral there was. I mean, you expect it, right, because of the house and the tradition and whatnot, but I think I counted like 20 looks that had floral patterns in out of 70 or something, so it was pretty prominent throughout the show. When you look through all these different looks, there's so much floral in there. Yeah, maybe a little too much, but there's a lot of that going on. In terms of the set, like I know, Jian, you touched on it earlier. One of the things that I'd read earlier as well was about, the show setting was where Kenzo did his initial show in like 52 years ago or whatever. Were you guys sort of surprised to see a show that was so pared back? Were you expecting like a bigger production? Like Kenzo have always been, a lot of the Kenzo shows I've been to over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, being quite like full-on theatrical shows. Like, were you surprised to see something quite so pared back?
I think one of the issues with when you have a debut show is there's so many things you can do. And so it's like, do you fit every single thing in like the first show, or do you sort of, separate it amongst different collections? So I think the surprise we saw, of course, was a lot of prints and patterns that obviously is very native to Kenzo, but not so much Nigo. And then maybe in the next collection, we might see like a crazy set, and we're like, oh, okay, so this is the next element and layer to Nigo's Kenzo. So I think it's sort of an idea, and his idea for Kenzo is something that might develop over a few seasons. But yeah, it was kind of, like you said, pared back. But I think we're going to see something different in future collections.
Yeah, I mean, Lei touched on this earlier, right? To me, it's almost like Kanye West college dropout type beat, because at 51, this is Nigo's first proper fashion show, and he is a Bunker College alum. And so it's almost like, let me take the fashion show as like a platform and make it, speak about the product, which I'm known for. Because I don't think anybody here can argue that Nigo is a product guy first and foremost. And by giving that the proper shine through this vehicle of a, quote unquote, traditional fashion show, again, speaks to that whole juxtaposition of different kinds of themes.
Yeah, I like the minimalist like runway show. Like sometimes when people are so worried about the production, it takes the attention away from like the actual clothes, And like you said earlier, like Nigo's a product guy, you know what I'm saying? So, but it was kind of funny. It looks like where was this at? It looked like it was like in a coffee shop or like a library. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it was dope. Minimalist is cool though. You know what I'm saying? It put the attention on the clothes, on the product.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was good to do that. Especially he emphasized a lot in interviews. He didn't want to do anything that felt like kind of gimmicky or something like that. Although I definitely was I did think he was gonna maybe involve more celebrity in it just because of his history with like the Babe Head shows back then and stuff like that. So I was surprised that, you know, I was expecting, oh, maybe he'll put like Pharrell on the runway or something like that. But, you know, it was just on the front row, which is, I thought was kind of more subtle and more chill. But I think that does play into its benefit because, you know, it should be about the clothes because I think we're just, you know, we've never seen this before. And like, yeah, that's just my thoughts on the set itself, you know.
I kind of wanted to follow up on that real quick. And anyone can answer this, like, what's your guys' opinion on like Nigo's, like, the reason that like Kenzo brings in someone like Nigo is because he has these connections with like all these celebrities, with like the culture, right? So whether it be like a Pharrell, Kanye, we're seeing Gunna, you know what I'm saying, on the catwalk, okay, on the sideline. Like, what's your opinion on like how this injection of like, you know, the influencer celebrities are going to be on the brand? Because if we're being honest, no one was really talking about Kenzo past 5 years. But like now that we're seeing like this influence of like, you know, these top tier guys, Tyler the Creator, like how is that going to change and probably like impact the brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to make it more popular and, you know, for younger people and stuff, and bring a different audience to the brand. You know, from a buying perspective, 100% more people are going to want to be in it and buying it for sure.
I kind of wonder how many people are going to actually wear a lot of the pieces we see on the runway, because I know at least in London, anytime you see someone wearing Kenzo, it's definitely just like a tiger sweatshirt or a tiger hoodie. So I want to see that with Nigo's era, sort of, will it develop and will people start, you know, buying into the pieces that we see on the runway?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to have that effect, right? I think when Virgil and Nigo teamed up for LV2 at Baton, right? Like that was the collection that put Nigo on the map for Kenzo. Like I think that the two are correlated. It's like LV2 happened, and then he got a call for Kenzo. And again, it's like I think it's such like a kind of Japanese trajectory, right? To have your debut show at 51, because it is about work hard, and then, you know, you're going to do your best work in your 30s and 40s, and then you're going to do your real work in your 50s, kind of thing. And culturally, it's just like that's kind of the matriculation of things. It's like United Arrows or stores like that too, where it's like, okay, you're going to work the floor until you reach X age. And so to me, I think to Jody's question about is there going to be an effect, I think it's about community above all. So I think the people that Nigo affected both as a collaborator but also as a fan, that is a wide swath of people, you know, myself included. I've you know, he's the general.
Yeah, I mean, I guess based on all those points, do you see a different customer at the brand? Do you see like those young kids getting into it now because Nigo's there, because he brings that sort of authenticity to the brand? Well, I mean, know kind of what he's about.
The fact that he's calling his album "I Know Nigo" says everything you need to know. You know, like you have guys like ASAP Ferg and kids on like Grail being like, I only buy Nigo era bait. Like the fact that it's like he's like Eddie, you know, Eddie Slimane, any top tier designer, like Raf era Jill, etc. You know, he is one of those people who came from the world of like sneaker street or whatever you want to call it, but he's become a GOAT in his own right.
Nah, for sure. I've spent too much money that I do not have in college buying Nigo era babe. You know what I'm saying? Like too much. So for sure. It's like almost like a cult, relate. You know what I'm saying?
I can definitely relate. There's definitely times I definitely didn't eat food because I had babes on, but it was for the culture. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think something I found really refreshing looking at the runway was just all the rappers on the runway, because when we think of like the 90s, people like, you know, P. Diddy, Kanye, Virgil, these guys literally had to fight to get into runway shows. And for a few years, I've always felt like, yes, they're at the Dior show or whatever, but I don't know that they're accepted there. I feel they're just accepted there because there was a point in time when they realized, oh, hip hop artists are profitable. It's not because they're actually accepted or because they actually care about hip hop or because they listen to it. And it's quite refreshing looking at the Kenzo runway show, knowing that Nigo is the creative director. It just feels way more genuine.
100%, 100%. Even like, I know we're talking about Kenzo, but like the Louis show, right? Tyler was doing, the background music, you know what I'm saying? And then now with the Kenzo show, this is like, think about this. Paris Fashion Week, it's rap music. Like, we got Kid Cudi, Teriyaki Boys, A$AP Ferg, Rocky. I haven't heard an A$AP Rocky verse, a legit verse in years. Man, don't rap no more. So I'm like, yo, we getting this at the Kenzo show? I'm like, all right, nigga, I see what you're doing. Nah, yeah, for sure. Like, it feels different. It feels genuine. And when you have someone like Nigo who has that respect from the culture, who puts his, like man said earlier, putting in work for years, you know what I'm saying, with multiple brands, and always bringing on the new guys, whether it be like maybe like an OG, obviously his man's like Pharrell, or pulling in like a Lil Uzi, you know what I'm saying? Working with Lil Uzi. It's just cool to see. It's cool to see, and it just feels different because Nigo appreciates culture and he's not a culture vulture, you know what I'm saying? And you could just see it, you know what I'm saying? For sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I thought was amazing is he was just sitting there watching the show as well. He was just sat next to Pharrell watching the show. I mean, I've all the hundreds of shows I've been to, I've not been to many shows where the creative directors, designers just sat watching the show, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, I think that honestly that is like the ultimate Nigo moment is like, I'm not going to watch backstage. I'm going to watch the show and watch my work as somebody out here, and I think, that speaks volumes about who he is and how he really sees what he does from the eyes of the kid that like wishes they could be doing the same thing in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. And just rather than him like coming out and taking a bow or whatever, he just stood up from his seat and kind of waved a few times and left. I thought it was super cool to just see him sat there watching the show.
I mean, I think this is also, a full circle moment in terms of like the history of where, him and fellow Bunka Fashion College alumni Jun Takahashi started, right? It's like literally a basement in Harajuku. They had that store called Nowhere. Like the only reason, Bape started is because Undercover was taking off and they got, the attention of like Rei Kawakubo. And then Nigo was like, all right, well, I'm doing like this vintage t-shirt thing. I guess I'm going to start a brand around, the Planet of the Apes kind of thing. I mean, that's a whole other story, but the fact that June, established fashion with a capital F, designer with many fashion shows under his belt, and then this being Nigo's first fashion show at Paris Fashion Week, I think is also significant.
Any thoughts on the kind of casting of the show? How did you think that went down?
I mean, to me, I think one thing we haven't really talked about, right, is Nigo's also doing women's wear now. And I think this is the first time he's done that. And I'm interested to see how that evolves, because especially with women being so important to Kenzo, right? And Nigo being primarily known as someone who designs ostensible menswear. Of course, there's fans of all genders that love his work, but I'm interested to see how this particular side of his design prowess progresses.
Yeah, I did think aesthetically the women's wear in this collection looked very different to what you'd historically see. Definitely more Western looking in this collection. Also, the silhouettes weren't as wide as Kenzo Takade's designs, what you would see historically. So it's quite interesting because it's not like it has to be exactly the same. So I'm just curious to see like what he does. But in terms of the casting, I don't think I looked too deeply into the casting. But yeah, there are elements of the collection in terms of how he referenced Kenzo's work that I liked, but not necessarily the casting. I didn't really look into that.
Yeah, I think the casting just goes into the statement what we were talking about earlier, where it's like by not stunt casting, by not having Cudi or Pharrell walk, it just lets the clothes speak even more to what he was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at big shows and they have like Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner and stuff, it doesn't really add anything to me. Like, it doesn't really add an
It
extra
takes
element
away.
of anything. So to me, it doesn't really make a difference. I think my interest in fashion more comes down to the clothes rather than the models wearing it, because I don't think that makes a collection any better or worse necessarily.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's definitely some famous model faces in there that you see on a lot of other runways, but like, he didn't feel the need to bring in any sort of A-list celebrities to be in the show, which is, yeah, as you say, is pretty refreshing, really, that they don't need that.
Yeah, I think Nigo, he understands like the climate, right? Like we've seen, you know, that before. Oh, let me just put my rapper friends someone said it perfectly. Like, he zigged when everyone thought he was gonna zag. Like, he could have easily just, all right, yo, Pharrell, you know, come on, dog, put this on. Yo, Kenny, come over here, and we could have got that show, but like, nah, like, I'm stepping up sturdy, and we're gonna just do it. It's about the clothes, you know. Like, it might have been a little too distracting just to see like Playboy Cardi, and like, I'm good on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just do it. Let's talk about the clothes. So I like the casting, and I also like how they would have like men and women wearing the same exact thing. Like, I like the cloud full print suit. It looked cool on the guy, but it looked fire on the girl. So yeah, I like the casting. It was cool.
And then in terms of the soundtrack, I mean, I know we touched on it a couple of times. What did you guys think to the soundtrack? Any kind of standouts?
I mean, I really loved that A$AP Rocky and Ferg song. The Tyler song and Pusha T verses are really good. I mean, yeah, that song was tough. That A$AP Rocky track, I listened to that like 5 times since the show. Like, I guess the only thing I thought was kind of odd was I guess it's more of a personal thing, but I feel like I kind of wish like Pop Smoke's legacy would just, you know, I feel like they're kind of digging into his hard drive a lot, and they just keep. But it's nice to hear him. Yeah, Steven Victor. You know, I mean, I kind of wish they would just let him rest in peace. You know what I mean? But other than that, love the soundtrack. You know,
I was thinking the verse was hard though.
It was hard. Yeah.
It's a hard verse. Yeah.
How did Nigo have a better verse than Ye? Like, the Pop Smoke verse on this project was better than like what was on Donda. So I'm like, yo, Nigo really got pulled. But yeah, this music was tough. The intro with Cuddy going crazy. The Rocky joint, Rocky got to get back in his bag. You know, he got a few verses here and there, but Rocky, you a rapper. I want to hear you rap. Ferg was going crazy. Yeah,
That
just
Tyler
good music.
verse was insane too.
Tyler verse was dummy. Tyler verse was dummy for sure. No. I'm gonna have to play that over and over again when that drops for sure.
I mean, yeah, it's you know, speaking of the soundtrack, right? This is almost like the mixtape before the mixtape, which is like, okay, like this clothing, you guys expect this from me, and I'm gonna give you what you need, which is this. And so it's almost like with this album coming out soon, it's like expect the same thing for me sonically.
And I love that, me personally, the way I look at fashion and music, they're intertwined. Like, I personally can't, like, and maybe this is the way I grew up, like how I took in streetwear and culture. It was like, oh, Kanye's wearing this. Like, all right, let me go ahead and research about this brand. And then now I look at this brand, I'm looking at this brand and this brand and this brand. It's like, so music and fashion has always been intertwined. Like, whenever I talk about music, I'm talking about fashion. And it's great to see like Nigo's first show, he had to pull out like a crazy hard album. Like, I remember I heard that he was dropping an album from like Academics' page. But and I was like, oh, okay. I know he dropped albums in the past with Teriyaki Boys and whatnot, but like, he's doing like a DJ Khaled, like pulling in like his friends dropping a hard tape. I'm like, nah, it was tough. It was tough. And it's like, I think that's what like art really is. Like, I feel like music and fashion are like, if it's a coin, it's like 2 different faces on the same coin. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just different ways to just like, you know, represent that for sure.
Yeah, facts. And you know, to bring it back to this collection, right? It's like streetwear and hip hop are 2 genres that sampling is par for the course. And then with this show, he's saying, yo, you guys think I'm gonna sample? No, I'm going full pastiche, which, you know, I'm gonna reference Takada-san's work. I'm going to dip in the archives. I'm going to show you that just because I know the past or know the archives doesn't necessarily mean, you know, I got to put an 808 behind it and just like make it appeal to like who you think my audience is, because I know who I am. I know who I want to express myself. And I know that, you know, everybody's multifaceted, and this collection is a reflection of that.
How's the reaction been, do you think? Obviously, the show was, what, 5 or 6 hours ago. I'm sure, like most of you, like myself, you've been looking at social media today or the news or whatnot. How do you think the reaction's been from what you've seen?
From what I've seen a really good reaction from both Nigo's original fans and just like fashion fans in general. One thing about Kenzo's work was that despite all the references, it was actually still very wearable, which is what this collection was. And I know that a lot of people have said that sort of Nigo makes product and he thinks about product a lot. So I think that was a good, because I think a lot of my friends, especially who like I used to skate with and aren't into fashion as much, they think of fashion as quite frivolous and quite pretentious at times, which it definitely is. And so this collection, seeing a high fashion house, Nigo at the helm, and sort of the clothing actually being stuff that people can see themselves wearing, was something that people found refreshing from what I was seeing.
I think regarding social media, I think the one thing that's kind of unfortunate is like the clothes are great, but like I feel like a lot of people are actually focusing on the people who arrived at the show rather than the show itself. Like I feel like I've seen mostly images of like, you know, Kanye and Julia Fox, you know, just like sitting or just attending the show rather than like the actual pieces. But from the tweets or the comments I've seen on the actual clothing, it seems like it's been received pretty positively. But it's just interesting just to recognize that that, you know, it seems like people were more paying attention to that rather than the actual show itself, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of a drawback, right? When you get someone like Nigo, you're gonna get like the whole like, because they're bringing in celebrity friends, so people, they don't like your average fan, they're not really looking at the clothes. But yeah, I feel like the reception's been good so far. You know what I'm saying? I haven't seen no hate. You know what I'm saying? People love to hate, especially when something's new. So I think it's good so far. I know I'm about to cut a few pieces, so for sure.
But I think what you guys are talking about, right, Leia and Jody, is not really an indictment of the show, but just it's a side effect of fashion becoming an integral part of pop culture, really, right? It's like we talk about Kanye and Pharrell being at a show, but then, you know, it's like everyone remembers that Comme des Garçons fall 2010 photo of like him, Virgil, Chris Julian, Taz Arnold, like outside being like, yo, who are these guys? What are they doing here? And now that's like literally the museum. You know, it's just crazy. But yeah, I think that's just a side effect of like, you know, what happens when everyone's like, oh, I'm into fashion now. And the same way the sneakers has become exploded and mainstream and gentrified, you know, where it's like the culture part is 90% commodity at this point, if not 90%.
No, 100%. Yeah, I'm sorry. That sneaker comment touched my heart because it's like, I remember like, what, we're in 2020. I could cop these on eBay, you know what I'm saying? In like what, 2015, 2016 for like $200. Now these are going for like, prices are crazy. And not everyone's into everything. Like, so kind of like going back to like the whole celebrity thing is like, it's great that like fashion has become like more inclusive and like everyone could like kind of be a part of it. But it also is like, y'all even really care, you know what I'm saying? But then I guess the part that's like my own pretentiousness, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you not up on this, bro. But I guess, but like going back to like the whole celebrity thing, it's like it's kind of like that drawback. Like people are more worried about like, yo, you seen Gunna? Or like, do you care about the piece? You know what I'm saying? But both is good because at the end of the day, fashion is a business, and more eyes means more potential dollars. So,
well, yeah, it's cyclical, right? Because it's like, you know, Gunna and Dior becoming a Rihanna Halloween costume, to like Pharrell wearing Kenzo, or, you know, a piece becoming a meme, to becoming like an instant status symbol because of who wears it is still very much a thing. Even more of a thing, I would say, in the age of like memes. If like you want your fashion piece to become a meme and like emblematic of a certain era of like oh, that 3 months was owned by like this piece. You almost want that.
I think you do want that. Like, I mean, because think about like the Bottega boot or like, you know, the Rico and Ramon, like how it has become like a meme shoe. Even when something's become negative, right? Like think about like the Comme des Garçons, like the CDG Play Converse, how that's called, oh, the heart shoe. You know what I'm saying? Like people love to hate, but they're still buying it. You know what I'm saying? So,
but that's exactly what the Kenzo sweatshirt was, 10 years ago. It's like you couldn't throw a rock in like Soho without hitting some sort of derivative of like a chenille sweatshirt that someone paid more than $300 for. And, that started with Kenzo. It's crazy.
yeah, for sure. I just feel like currently, like before the show, when people think of Kenzo, you think of like the clearance section at like Nordstrom as of like currently, but like now it's like, I'm excited to see where the brand goes. And it's just funny to see like just one person can really hopefully like make the brand like a total 360. Like now it's like, yo, you got that new Kenzo? Nah, fam. It could be fun to see like the next like 1 or 2 years where the brand goes, for sure.
For sure. I mean, because I think, and Nigo, I think, is a testament to that, right? How that consumer evolves, and like as fashion has become as much of a competition as ever, right? It's like, oh, you're still in the Bape, like I'm in the human made now, and you're like, oh, you're still in the human made, like I'm getting Nigo Vuitton, and it's like, oh, you're still on that, like I'm on Nigo Kenzo now, and I'm only buying that. And I think that is something totally exclusive to this new paradigm than how fashion used to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm one of those guys. So I know you.
Oh, same.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pusha T wearing some Kenzo to the show as well is definitely going to help the brand. I mean, I can't imagine they were going to get Yee to wear it in his current denim two-piece phase. But yeah, Pusha wearing the knit and the sneakers I think he had on at the show.
I mean, Tyler wearing that leather A2 Vuitton bomber with the tigers. It's like,
yeah,
grand opening, grand closing. Once people look that up, and like I think it's the same effect with like Nigo and the stuff we see here. It's like Pharrell in that snorkel parka. You want that effect, and that's how people sort of access fashion now.
Yeah, no,
like
for sure.
When you think about it, like I literally can't remember a time when Kenzo was this relevant, because I mean, in the early 2000s, I was like, what, 5 years old, 6 years old? So I obviously didn't know what was going on. So as far as I know, this is probably the most buzz the brand has seen in years. So that has to do something positively for the brands.
Not for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think as a luxury, sorry, I was just going to say, as a luxury brand, it's like definitely a more affordable one at the moment as well in terms of some of the other people that are in this playing field. It's definitely like accessible. Even if people want to start wearing the Tiger sweatshirt, they're definitely more accessible than a lot of other luxury sweatshirts.
Yeah, I think this particular collection firmly pushes it out of that realm, where it's like, oh, we're not going to really show a lot of hoodies and sweatshirts at all. It's like a lot of tailoring, a lot of wovens, really detailed knits, things like that. It pushes it into the fashion category proper.
Yeah, I still think for sure though, as soon as you get in the showroom, there'll be plenty of that stuff available for the consumer,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were expecting that we're going to see some sort of new kind of tiger logo because it's the year of the tiger, and then like Kenzo made or something, right? Because that's what like was expected from Nigo for anybody who's like followed his canon and seen how his work has evolved. And so, again, that's why it was such a pleasant surprise to see him just take things in a totally different direction.
I'm curious, like, do you think that like I guess maybe like the younger fashion consumer who's like maybe in this teenager to like early 20s, do you think they'll gravitate towards this collection? Like, because I feel like when I just go out on the street and see people wearing like Dior, Louis and stuff like that, it's usually very logo heavy, logo centric, right? Whereas this, I feel like I don't really get that vibe, but it's still dope, But yeah, I was just curious if what y'all think about that, like.
I mean, how much time do we have?
We're running out.
Yeah. Basically, I will say is that what we used to talk about in terms of authenticity and provenance as buzzwords has now become about recency. And, the algorithm on TikTok and Instagram has become the single biggest influencer in culture as a whole. Like if a sneaker takes over your feed, you're going to see it. And you see in the street, you're going to be like, oh, that's the joint I saw on IG. Like that's the New Balance 550. And same with fashion. That's why, like, if you know, the Kenzo 1970 bomber or like one of these floral pieces becomes like a thing on the internet, you know, that's what kids are going to know it as.
Mm-hmm. And there was quite a few logos in there. I'm not sure how much you guys went into detail into the show, but when you look at a lot of pieces, that little red Kenzo Paris logo is like on quite a lot of the cuffs and on the pockets. It is still quite prominent, even on some of the floral pieces. When you zoom right in, they definitely still have the logo, whether they need it or not, but there definitely is a logo still present, which I think that, you know, the brand have been doing for a number of years anyway. So, you know, Nigo's certainly not taken that away. On some of the pieces, when you zoom in, I think on some of the, you know, it might be removable on a more tailored sleeve, obviously, but on, you know, on pockets and stuff, it's probably
some of the
removable.
skirts. I was gonna say they just had Kenzo blatantly sewn into the bottom of them. So yeah, there were some that were very logo heavy. I think it just depends on the reasoning for wearing clothing. I know there is still a big flex culture, and everyone, it's this whole idea of like, yeah, my jacket's 3K, like that's what I'm on type of thing. But there's also like a set of people that genuinely care about the aesthetic, because I know when it comes to kids and like aesthetic now, loads of kids wear Levi's, or a lot of kids wear Carhartts because of what they've seen on their feed. And that's not really logo based or because of the logo, it's more an aesthetic that they're trying to go for. So I think it just depends on the type of consumer.
Yeah, for sure.
I think with like Nigo, like a lot of his stuff though is kind of the flex. Like if we're talking like early Bape, obviously like, you know, the Bape studs, the all over print, you know what I'm saying? That was just a flex, like
big flex.
But that's the early 2000s was like, it's flexing. Like I want to be the loudest. Human Made is also, even though it's more subdued, it's still a flex, low key. Like, yo, I got you with a little duck, you know what I'm saying? And then like the Louis V collab, that's a flex. Like the monogram drip pants, that's a flex. So just to answer homie's question earlier about like the younger generation, I just think like it has to hit TikTok. There has to be a standout piece that like some influencer, 21-year-old white girl in California is gonna wear, and then it's gonna go viral, and then like it's gonna be cut. But that's totally what it is, you know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? So I can see most definitely going that route.
So we gotta see who's gonna be the first dude to shower in Kenzo to see how waterproof it is.
Nah,
is what
for
you're
sure.
saying.
Nah, for sure. It gotta be something dumb, but I can totally see it happening, you know?
All right, we got to wrap it up pretty soon. Just love to just get some final thoughts from you guys.
I can go first, I guess. But yeah, I thought it was a really good showing. You could definitely see a lot of Nigo's research. Obviously, there was a fusion of the Western and Eastern culture that we've come to expect from Kenzo's work. And obviously, Nigo showed that in his own way. I did like the music. I like the colors that he used because it wasn't typical of Nigo. So it's kind of him stepping out of his comfort zone a little bit, which is kind of a good thing to do with your debut show. It's like making a statement. So yeah, overall, I did think it was a great first showing, and I'm just interested to see how it develops, like what stores buy certain things and what pieces become the big pieces, like people are saying on TikTok or Instagram, or what piece are we going to see Pharrell wear that becomes the big Instagram photo. So yeah, it's all really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just close with an analogy that Kirby Jean Raymond of Pierre Moss told me, right? Which is like when you're talking about fashion and you're talking about collections and judging a body of work, that debut collection is track one of an album, and the process is still being written. And so, you know, that's what we're looking at, is like the first track in, you know, a multi-song album, and it's a strong one. You know, he opened with a banger.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think it was a really good first collection from Nigo for this brand. And it's just amazing thing about just his career trajectory from like, you know, Ura Harajuku to here. And just like, yeah, no, I'm just really excited.
Well, I'm excited, but then I'm also angry because now I got to spend money I don't got on more clothes. You know what I'm saying? But like in all seriousness, it was dope. I liked it. I love the music aspect. I love the actual clothes. I love the tailoring of it all. And I love how it's ready to wear. Like I could wear this, you know what I'm saying, to brunch, you know what I'm saying? I might go to the club, you know what I'm saying? It's dope. So most definitely I'm gonna be acting like I've been on Kenzo. Yeah, bro, I've been on Kenzo, fam. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's dope for sure.
Yeah, I know for myself, I thought it was a really, really good first collection. You know, he really brought his sort of authenticity to the show, and looking at a lot of the influence that we've discussed over the last hour. You know, I think he's going to really turn the corner with the brand, and bring a new audience for sure. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you to all our panelists today, and the virtual audience. Thank you all for watching. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to check out showstudio.com. And if you're watching via Show Studio's YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.